1917? Imagine the chaos. The air is thick with uncertainty. The streets echo with the shouts of protest and the thunder of marching boots. The world as Russians knew it is dissolving before their eyes. The Russian Empire, vast and mighty, crumbles from within. Centuries of autocratic rule are collapsing and the old order is powerless to stop the tide of change. The Tsar, once an absolute ruler, is swept aside by revolution. Nicholas II, the last emperor, is forced to abdicate, his authority shattered by the will of the people. His power, his dynasty, gone in a blink. The Romanovs, who ruled for over 3 centuries, are now prisoners of history, exiled and forgotten by the very nation they once commanded. But from the ashes of this fallen empire, something new is rising. The old world is gone, but a new uncertain future is being forged in the fires of revolution, a force born of revolution, forged in blood and fire. These are not professional soldiers, but workers, peasants, and dreamers, united by a vision of a different Russia. This is the story of the Red Army, an army that would rise from the chaos, shaped by desperation and hope, destined to change the course of history. How did this army emerge from the chaos of revolution? How did a ragtag group of revolutionaries become a force that would shake the world? The answer, my friends, lies in the heart of a nation in turmoil. Russia was a land on the edge, its people desperate for change, its cities boiling with unrest. Russia, vast and sprawling, was a land of discontent. From the frozen fields of Siberia to the crowded streets of Petrograd, the people were restless, hungry, and angry. The common man, burdened by poverty and war, yearned for change. Soldiers, exhausted by years of brutal conflict, and peasants, crushed by hardship, demanded a new beginning. And change, like a storm, was brewing. The winds of revolution swept across the land, gathering strength with every passing day. The year 1917 saw not one, but 2 revolutions. First, the February Revolution, then the October Revolution, each shaking the foundations of Russian society. The February Revolution toppled the Tsar, but it couldn't quell the unrest. The provisional government that followed was weak, unable to satisfy the people's demands for peace and bread. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin and Trotsky, saw their opportunity. They promised a new world, one built on equality and justice, and the people listened. Promising peace, land, and bread, they seized power in October. The world watched as the Bolsheviks stormed the Winter Palace and claimed the future for themselves. But their victory triggered a new struggle, a brutal civil war that would determine the fate of Russia. The country was plunged into chaos once more, as Reds and Whites battled for control. This is where our story truly begins. In the fires of civil war, the Red Army would be born, tested, and transformed. With Russia ablaze, the Bolsheviks faced a terrifying reality. No army, no power. Their revolution was fragile, threatened on all sides by enemies old and new. They needed a force to defend their revolution, to crush their enemies. They needed to inspire hope, discipline, and unity among a divided people. They needed the Red Army. And so, from the ruins of empire and the dreams of revolution, a new army would rise, one that would shape the destiny of Russia and the world. The Bolsheviks, fresh from their triumph, faced a daunting task. Their victory in October 1917 was only the beginning of a much larger struggle. The euphoria of revolution quickly gave way to the grim reality of governing a vast, war-torn nation. The old world had been swept away, but what would take its place was far from certain. Their revolution, still fragile, was threatened on all sides. The new Soviet government was beset by chaos, hunger, and uncertainty. The streets of Russia's cities echoed with both hope and fear, as the people wondered what the future would bring. Monarchists, yearning for the old regime, plotted their return. In the shadows, former nobles and officers schemed to restore the Tsar, gathering support from those who longed for the stability of the past. Foreign powers, fearing the spread of communism, sent armies to intervene. British, French, American, and Japanese troops landed on Russian soil, determined to crush the Bolshevik experiment before it could ignite revolutions elsewhere. Russia, once a mighty empire, was on the verge of collapse. Years of war, revolution, and economic breakdown had left the country in ruins. Famine stalked the countryside, and entire towns lay in rubble. The need for an army was dire, but where to find soldiers? The Bolsheviks had seized power, but they lacked the means to defend it. The fate of the revolution hung in the balance. The old Tsarist army, riddled with dissent, had dissolved. Millions of soldiers deserted, weary of endless war and broken promises. The once mighty Russian military was now a memory, its barracks empty and its banners torn. The Bolsheviks initially relied on volunteer Red Guards workers and peasants who took up arms for the revolution. These men and women were fueled by passion and hope, but they lacked training and experience. But these untrained, ill-equipped fighters were no match for the professional armies arrayed against them. Their courage was real, but so were their limitations. The revolution's survival demanded something more. Enter Leon Trotsky, a brilliant strategist and ruthless leader. He was appointed Commissar of War, entrusted with the impossible, to forge a new army from the ashes of the old. Tasked with creating a new army from scratch, he faced a Herculean challenge. Trotsky's vision was clear. Only a disciplined, organized force could save the revolution from destruction. His answer was a blend of innovation and pragmatism. He traveled tirelessly by armored train, inspiring recruits and enforcing discipline wherever he went. He embraced universal conscription, forcing every able-bodied man to serve. The Red Army swelled with new recruits, drawn from every corner of the fractured nation. He welcomed back former Tsarist officers, their experience too valuable to ignore. Despite deep mistrust, Trotsky knew that victory required expertise, even from yesterday's enemies. Trotsky understood that an army is more than just men and guns. It needs discipline, purpose, and a will to fight. He demanded loyalty and imposed strict order, transforming raw recruits into soldiers. He imposed harsh punishments for desertion and insubordination. The stakes were life and death, and Trotsky made sure every soldier understood the cost of failure. He unleashed a wave of propaganda, glorifying the revolution and demonizing its enemies. Posters, speeches, and agitators worked tirelessly to inspire belief in the Bolshevik cause. And slowly, surely, the Red Army began to take shape. What started as a desperate gamble was becoming a force to be reckoned with, united by purpose and forged in adversity. But its baptism by fire was about to begin. The fate of the revolution would soon be decided on the blood-soaked fields of civil war. As Russia convulsed, its neighbors sensed opportunity. For centuries they had chafed under the Tsar's yoke. Now, with the empire weakened, they saw their chance for freedom. Finland, Poland, the Baltic states all rose up, eager to reclaim their independence. Finland, a land of forests and lakes, had long resisted Russian rule. In 1918, Finnish nationalists, aided by German troops, launched a war of independence. The fighting was fierce, a brutal struggle for survival. But in the end, the Finns prevailed, securing their hard-won freedom. Poland, partitioned for over a century, saw a chance for rebirth. Their struggle was particularly poignant. They faced not only the Red Army, but also lingering resentment from their former German and Austrian overlords. The Poles, led by the charismatic Józef Pilsudski, fought with extraordinary courage and tenacity. The Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, also declared independence. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Their struggle was no less heroic, their desire for self-determination just as strong. These new nations, born from the ashes of empire, would forever shape the map of Europe, but their birth was not without pain, their existence far from secure. For the Red Army seeking to reassert Russian dominance was on the march. The Red Army, under Trotsky's iron hand, was rapidly evolving. From a ragtag militia, it was transforming into a formidable fighting force. But, its early years were marked by brutal challenges, both internal and external. The revolution, far from secure, was locked in a life-or-death struggle. Trotsky, a master organizer, imposed strict discipline and centralized control. He understood that a modern army required more than just revolutionary zeal. Logistics, communications, training, all these were crucial for victory. He established military academies, churning out a new generation of Red Army officers. One of Trotsky's most controversial decisions was to recruit former Tsarist officers. These men, experienced but often ideologically opposed to the Bolsheviks, were viewed with suspicion. Yet Trotsky recognized their value. He created a system of political commissars, loyal Bolsheviks tasked with monitoring the officers and ensuring their loyalty. This uneasy alliance between red and white, revolutionary and Tsarist, proved surprisingly effective. The old officers brought their military expertise, while the commissars provided ideological guidance and ensured discipline. It was a marriage of convenience, born of necessity, but it would prove crucial in forging the Red Army's fighting spirit. The newly independent Poland, led by the ambitious and visionary Józef Pilsudski, quickly became a focal point for conflict in post-World War I Europe. Emerging from over a century of partitions and foreign rule, the nation was determined to secure its sovereignty and shape its own destiny. The Poles, eager to expand their borders eastward and reclaim lands lost to the Russian Empire, soon clashed with the Red Army. The Soviets, meanwhile, sought to reassert Russian control over its former territories and spread the ideals of the Bolshevik Revolution westward, hoping to ignite a wave of communist uprisings across Europe. The result was a clash of ambitions, a brutal and unpredictable war that would test the mettle, resolve, and endurance of both sides. Villages were destroyed, and the landscape of Eastern Europe was scarred by the violence. The Polish army, though smaller and less equipped than the massive Red Army, possessed a secret weapon, an unbreakable national fervor and a deep sense of purpose. They were fighting not just for territory, but for their homeland, their families, and the very survival of their nation. The support from civilians on the home front was unwavering, and morale among the troops soared to incredible heights. The early stages of the war saw stunning Polish victories, as their forces advanced with speed and determination, catching the Soviets off guard. In a bold move, the Poles pushed eastward, capturing the historic city of Kiev and threatening the very heartland of the Soviet state. For a moment, it seemed as if the tide of history might turn in Poland's favor. The Red Army, initially caught off guard and reeling from defeat, quickly regrouped under the determined leadership of Leon Trotsky. He reorganized the Soviet forces and inspired them to fight back with renewed vigor. Launching a fierce counteroffensive, the Soviets pushed the Poles back across the vast plains, driving them steadily westward and threatening the very gates of Warsaw. As the Red Army advanced, anxiety gripped both nations. In Warsaw, civilians waited anxiously for news, while both armies prepared for what would become a decisive confrontation. The Battle of Warsaw, fought in August 1920, would prove to be the turning point of the entire conflict, a moment when the fate of Poland and perhaps all of Europe hung in the balance. It was more than just a military struggle. It was a clash of ideologies, a fight for survival, and a battle for the future direction of the continent. The Poles, with their backs to the wall and everything to lose, fought with incredible bravery and determination, refusing to yield even in the darkest hours. In a dramatic turn, they managed to halt the Red Army's advance at the very last moment, then launched a ferocious counterattack that sent shockwaves through the Soviet ranks. The Soviets, exhausted, demoralized, and unprepared for the Polish resurgence, were routed and forced into a chaotic retreat. The miracle on the Vistula, as it became known, not only saved Poland from destruction but also marked a decisive turning point in the war, shaping the future of Eastern Europe for years to come.